I'm Brian Barnes, and I was president in 2004 and 5.
And I am Jean Boudreau, formerly Jean Barnes. I was president 2012, 2013.
Otis Logue, who some will remember, way back years ago when he and I were putting coats on after a funeral, said, "Are you going to the Iron Ring next week?" And I said, "Well, I hadn't thought about it." And he says, "Well, when you do, would you come early and give us a hand?" So 40 years later, I was still a warden. So fast forward, and Otis called me this time, and he's after the water tower collapsed up here, and he said, "We have to look into a complaint about the water tower," and a couple of our committee members were involved with that. So we're looking for a temporary committee man. And I said, "Yeah," not being, fast thinker. And so I joined that committee, and I was sucked in. Oh, well, Otis retired, and it was suggested that I could become the Director of Professional Affairs. And and then after I retired, I ran for president. So,
Well, to be honest, I can't remember who called me, but it was in 1991, and I was asked to sit on the Scholarship Awards Committee. So I did that for 3 or 4 years, and I guess I've been kind of off and on committees, off and on, ever since then.
Oh, well, I was originally a civil engineer, interested in water and sewer, and started out in New Brunswick Water Authority, which was water resources and pollution control, which turned into environment. When I started, there was one half-baked sewage treatment plant in Shediac, and that was it, other than the armed forces. And when I retired some 30 years later, we had it in just about every municipality, plus a lot of industrial places as well.
I am a civil engineer, but I work for a geotechnical and environmental firm, but I have a kind of a little gig on the side because I'm transportation. I'm the different person. So highways and culverts are my big thing. Water and sewer, landfills and sewage treatment plants clothed and fed me and my sisters and put us all through school. And so dumps and garbage, those are good things.
Well, one thing about it is that I met a lot of young engineers when I was involved with the association here. And then when I was president, I traveled across the country and met a lot of engineers elsewhere in Canada, 2 or 3 of whom I met later as when I was a warden, and they became wardens as well. A warden is a member of the ritual calling of an engineer, which hands out the iron rings to graduates.
Well, the year I was president, there were a couple of extra things. The Queen Elizabeth Jubilee medals were given out that year, and 2 of our members received medals, Ed Smith and Hollis Cole. Another thing that year as well, the president of Geoscientists Canada came to our members' reception in December to award one of our past presidents, Bruce Broster, the 2012 National Geoscientist Award. So those were 3 that were particular that year. I also got to present the Citizenship Award to Dad, and somebody else wrote the speech, which is a good thing, because there were a lot of things growing up that you didn't know that Dad was involved with or what he was doing. We knew that when we went out somewhere, Dad would drop us off at whatever we wanted to do, and he'd probably go look at a dump or a sewage treatment plant or something, and that was fine with us to get left behind. But when you read all the things that he accomplished, it was wow, Dad, you did that.
Unique, I guess, is the best way I can describe it. Not very often your daughter presents you something publicly.
Oh, the other thing that we did, it was the first time father-daughter situation, was in the calling of the ritual for the engineers, the iron ring. One student is asked to participate in the ceremony on behalf of all the students that are receiving their rings. And in my senior year, I was called to the assistant dean's office, and I thought, this is different, why would I be there? And he spoke to me and said that they would have to pick a student to participate in the ceremony, and this year they were asking me to be the student. And although it wasn't Dad's turn to be the warden involved with that particular part of the ceremony, they were going to ask him to do it because in the past they had a father-son duo participate in it, but this was the first time that they would have a father-daughter. So Dad got to put my ring on as part of the actual ceremony. So that was a neat experience as well.
Bearing in mind, you see, that when I graduated from UNB, there had only been about probably less than half a dozen female engineers graduated up to that time. And there was one female engineer in our class, but there hadn't been one for three or 4 years before that. And that's how frequent we had female engineers then.
He was talking about being a warden. At one point, he was chief warden, head warden, whatever they called them. But at home, he was the great poobah, grand poobah, the guy from Fred Flintstone, the water buffalo guys with the fancy hat. That was Dad, because when he was practicing the ritual for the calling of the engineer, we said, okay, Dad's got to go be grand poobah this week. So he didn't necessarily get the respect at home that he was recognized for by the association. Well, I guess it was kind of a combination. The fact that my father was an engineer, my mother had wanted to be an engineer, and both my parents encouraged, I have 4 sisters, encouraged all 5 of us to do something we were interested in, and without really saying it, you can do whatever you want to do. That was just the direction, or the inspiration, I guess, that we got from home. So that was that, in combination with thinking about all the other things that you could do. And with UNB in our backyard, Dad was hoping that we would all choose to go to UNB. And he did once or twice mention the fact that UNB had a very prestigious engineering program. But I knew I didn't want to be a nurse, and I didn't know what you would do with a Bachelor of Science, so I figured I might as well make it a Bachelor of Science in Engineering. I had a meeting with a guidance counselor in high school in grade, I think it must have been late grade 11, and she said, I see you're in the college preparatory program. I said yes, and she said, and you're taking sciences, and I said yes, and she said, you're planning to go to university, and I said yes, and she said, and you're going to take business, and I said no. And she said, oh, what were you thinking of, science? And I said, no, I was thinking about engineering. And she said, oh my. Anyway, I took engineering anyway.
Well, it's perhaps rather interesting that I had to conduct 2 annual meetings because my predecessor took a job in Western Canada and wasn't around. So I had to come home in Florida twice, once in Edmonton and once in Fredericton. And at the Edmundston meeting was the first discussion about going ahead with the building. And we followed it up with my second meeting in Fredericton. We established the committee that started the initial work on developing the building.
We were starting to do the work to open the act, to update that, and I think it was the first time we tried live streaming the annual meeting, and we were newly doing electronic elections. So there were new things going on, but I don't think there was any one real significant thing that stands out. It takes a while for change to occur, and things get started with one council, and it tends to take 2 or 3 councils or more to get them accomplished. And I think we were kind of in that transition mode where we had several things started. Mandatory reporting for continued competency. That's something that we were starting to talk about at the time, and it's hopefully going to be rolled out digitally here pretty soon. So we were working away behind the scenes without any real great fanfare, I guess, to say da-da. But you have to have that as well as the big aha moments too. So
I would just note that I was in Florida trying to watch the meeting on that first year of annual streaming, and it was not really successful. And one of my other daughters, who's married to an engineer, said, Dad will be standing on the deck throwing that computer in the swimming pool. And Tom Sis said, "Oh, your father wouldn't do that, would he?"
He had already met you.
No, I don't think so. I've done different things throughout my career. Spent a long time in environment, and then I was in the housing corporation, and then I did consulting, and a number, as I say, I retired 3 times. And so I was interested in doing some different things, and no, I wouldn't change either the ritual or the association. I mean, they're complementary, but they're separate.
Oh, absolutely! I'd do it again. It was a great thing. I'm glad I did it. I wasn't convinced that I was ready to do it, but it most definitely was. It's rewarding. It's educational. It's inspiring. It puts some of us out of our comfort zone. Getting up and speaking in front of people, or making the awards, doing things that maybe you don't do very often or on a day-to-day basis. But absolutely, I would recommend it to anybody. That's a good question. Well, I mean, it's like I said, it's rewarding. It's a learning experience. You definitely get to meet a lot of good people. You develop friendships. I mean, even my husband, when I became president, and he was a little leery about traveling around and meeting people, he's met lots of people, and he's quite proud to say that the year I passed the chain of command to the next president, he figures he got a bigger ovation than I did. So that's his little bit for it. But in any volunteer organization, you need a certain amount of continuity. You need some history to be kept, but you also need fresh blood. You need new ideas. You need young people involved. And to me, it's been kind of an in and out kind of thing, and I think that's a good thing. I think you need more people involved. Hopefully more people would be interested in getting involved, whether it's just a committee, whether it's council, whether it's president, whatever. But you need new ideas, you need fresh blood, but you do need the continuity. So and you can't have people staying on forever, because then you kind of get things stuck in a rut, and that's not a good thing either.
For instance, I was a warden for 40 years, and that's far too long. I should have stepped aside earlier, but anyway, it just of course that's limited to two formal ceremonies a year. So it just I enjoyed meeting all these new graduates, but nevertheless, I should have stepped aside earlier. First of all, there are a lot of professions that have associations such as ours, and some of them are under attack for various reasons. I think that as long as the Canadian system of professional criteria, it's not quite right, but nevertheless it'll do, is maintained, then we have to be sure that we maintain our status. And if someday government decides that they're going to take over control of all professions, then so be it. But I don't think they want it. I don't think they're interested in the cost. I don't think they're interested in the difficulties that it has, and so therefore we should do our best to maintain an acceptable level of administration.
There is in British Columbia right now. There's a few professions that are going to have their self-regulation overseen by a provincial department, and this could be coming. There is talk about some professions losing the right for self-regulation, and I think it is something that we should be concerned about. And our members should be concerned about, not just council. Our members should be making themselves aware of the issues that are facing the profession, and become involved and knowledgeable, because they don't always like to hear what council has to say, and sometimes we need them to hear the things that they don't want to hear, in order for us to do the job that we have to do.
You better have a thick skin. And I was careful not to come in and gung-ho. Make sure that people are comfortable with what they're doing, and that if you're going to make changes, yes, make changes, but take your time and make sure you're going in the right direction.
The year will go by very quickly, and there is work. Definitely there is work, but there is also there's good that comes of it. So it will fly by very quickly, and you the bottom line is, I'm sure when you get to the end, when you're passing it on to the next one, you'll be saying, that year we had a good year. I enjoyed that year. I'm glad I did it.
Yes, for sure.